this video I want to show you a secret trick how you can rip a kick from another track. This will be a really exciting video. In the end of the video you will be able to decide if you want to use this or for what you want to use this, if you want to use it directly or to improve your own sound design, and how to do it in a cleaner way than you might have thought in the beginning. And I want to quickly show you the result of this technique. For example, this is the original track. And this will be the kick which we will have extracted after the tutorial. So the first thing is we will need a reference track in which we obviously like the kick. So that's kind of like our source material. It must be good. It must be something we really like, where we kind of like enjoy the sound of it, because that will heavily influence our result, obviously. Probably you go for something recent from a favorite artist of yours, and then we can start with that. Once you have the track inside, it's important that you put the warp off, because we don't want to have any like time stretching algorithms applied. It will change the sound drastically. That's what we not want to do. The track I want to use this kick later for, and just like a short disclaimer, I will go a bit about the disadvantages later. I won't use it like that, is in 143. So I just put it like to 145 because this track where I took a look at the kick is in 145, and I want to have it exactly on the grid because that will be really important once we do the process. So what will we do in the first step? We will look for a section where we only have the kick and bass. To be honest, it's kind of like rarely a thing that you only hear the kick and bass. If you really pay attention to things, then you will notice there's almost every time some effects, some pad, some delay, some reverb from a sound previous to it. So we will need to look for a section where we have the cleanest kicks we can get. And usually you find that in the intro and after the break. So that's kind of like the sections where you don't have leads, where you usually have not too many effects, but the effects you usually have like huge delays and reverb. So they're still inside here. So for example, in this track, as you can see, so that's the intro here. It didn't start over here, and the reason why is because there was some effect here which was delaying heavily over this. What I want to do in this process is not only to find like one good kick, I want to find like a bunch of good kicks. So in this track, for example, I went a little bit more into the middle of kind of like the intro section, and then I found like a bunch of kicks which I can copy for my purposes. So I was not only taking one, I was taking like 10 kicks from the track, and you can also combine from intro and break. Doesn't really matter, just look that there's not a lot of things in it which you don't want to have. So once we have like a few kicks isolated, and what you basically do to isolate is you just cut them with Command E. You can hear Command E, and then your kick is cut here. So you have here this nice kick, this one shouldn't be here, I just duplicated this one. So we have like a bunch of those kicks which all have a little bit effects in them. So if you listen to that, there's like this If you pay close attention, there's like this small kind of like vocalish pad in here. Then over here, we still have like a tail from this and so on. So it's not like super clean everything. So what we do in the next step is we place all that kicks here into a drum rack. So as you can see, they all have like different starting points. So there's no need to kind of like consolidate those kicks. You can just place them like this into the drum rack, and it should set the start markers. You need to check if everything is all right. But let's say every single one of this is like a kick starting exactly at the same position. So that's why it's really important that it's kind of on the grid, and that you don't have like one kick like 5 milliseconds earlier and the second 3 milliseconds later. You want to have them like really straight at the same position. That's really important, because otherwise it won't work. And now comes the trade-off. The idea behind this drum rack is that we are playing all those kicks at the same time. So you can see we are stacking them all on top of each other. And what will happen? It's basically mathematics. So we're kind of like summing all those kicks. And the idea I had is the more clean kicks we get in, the more we kind of like get the errors out. So let's say we have one kick which has 2 dBs too much at 150 hertz, and one kick which has 2 dBs too much at 1K. Then after summing these kicks and kind of like bringing them to level again, we have only 1/10 of that error inside anymore. And that's kind of like where the trade-off comes in. Like the more kicks you bring in, the more you will kind of like minimize those errors on the one hand, but on the other hand, you will bring in more errors. So let's say we would have one kick, then maybe we have that 3 dB error in 150 Hertz. And now we have 2 kicks, then we only have maybe like 1.5 dBs error in that 150 Hertz area, but we get like another error in another area. So that's kind of like the trade-off. So just look for like really clean kicks and not for like as many as you can get. Like maybe it's like 5, maybe it's 10, maybe it's 20, whatever you think doesn't have like a lot of extra stuff in there. It's quite clean. You don't hear that huh anymore in it. So I think the technique is quite nice actually. So once we have them all here in the drum rack, I do some processing, but I want to show it like in a minute for you that you know what's going on. I will just record this here, a kick ripper post mixer. So we're recording from this channel where we play all of our kicks at the same time. Now when I record, it will be too loud. So you will see in a second. We basically flattened our kick out. It's like one big square wave, more or less. And we don't want to have that because then we lose all the information, obviously. So the first step we need to do is we need to bring this to level. And it doesn't need to be the original kick level. It can be some level. If you solo this track and you look in the master, it can be like some level which peaks at around 0. Maybe like a little bit of safety room here. So I'm peaking here at minus 0.02. I think that's fine. That's where we get like a good quality. And when we record it now as we recorded this out, we can see we don't have that square form anymore. So it's already kind of like there. But if we compare it, there is still something missing here. So the reason why this is because here in the drum rack, we have the snap option, and the snap option will try to find a point where we have the 0 crossing so that there's no click in here. So you can read that basically if you hover over this, and you will read this here on the left side. What we can do is we can just turn this snap option off. And now, as I have recorded this, we will get like the full kick here with the full length. It's not like perfectly probably at 0 here. Actually, I'm wondering a bit why that option made it shorter, because it is at exactly 0 here. But anyways, if you turn that option off, then you will get the full kick here. But now we still have all the kind of like errors in it. And also we have like half of the bass line in our kick, which we want to avoid or which we want to get rid of. And before I explain you how we get kind of like rid of all those errors, or the best possible we can get rid of those errors, and also kind of the hi-hat here if we want to remove it, I want to make like a short excursus on how a kick actually is designed, or what makes it that shape, because it will help us in understanding how to clean it. I quickly brought kick 2 here, and what you can see is like a kick is basically a sweep through different frequencies. So we're starting at the highest frequency here on the left side. So we are going very rapidly from this 10.5K here to 1.1K. So we are having like only like a short, very, very tiny amount of time in our whole time range here. So if the whole kick is having this length here, and we're only like this kind of like split second time in the very high frequencies. Then we are all here in the mid frequency range, and then almost kind of like at, let's say maybe even from here, we are probably like, let's pick a point here. Yeah, 500 Hertz, right here 300 Hertz, and here 200 Hertz. So we can see basically we are already going into lower mids here, and we are at half of the kick, we are almost kind of like low mid, low end territory. That's really important knowledge if we want to go into the next step. So in the next step, we want to clean out all the frequencies which we don't want to have. So the next thing we will need is a multiband compressor. And I set the multiband compressor to an expander, and how you can imagine an expander is basically the reverse of compression. So compression is you have a threshold, a sound is too loud, it gets lowered in volume, so it gets ducked. And an expander works the opposite way around. You have a threshold, every sound which is lower than the threshold gets ducked. So that's something you could say like a gate, basically. Something which lowers frequencies or noise or whatever you set it to. which you don't want to have in. And if you remember the structure of the kick I just showed you, then you know that there's only high frequencies in here. Then this part is kind of like the mids, then comes like low mids, and then in the end we only have low frequencies. And when you have that knowledge and combine it with this expander, then you want to duck all the low frequencies here. Then you want to duck all the high frequencies over here. And the tricky part is actually this in between, like the middle low mid part. I went quite straightforward with only 3 bands here. I guess the more bands you use, the more you can get this nailed and really set it up in a proper way. But I think you get quite good results with 3 bands. So what I did, I set the low band very low, so everything like below like 90 hertz. I believe that's mostly like this part of the kick, and the high band I set to 5K. Maybe it's actually a little bit too low. Maybe it's even better if we set it like to a higher value, like 10K maybe. Let's check that. Yeah, 10K looks decent to me. And the middle band is here. I put all the attacks very low and the releases very, not zero, but very low, very high ratios and a very hard knee. So basically a knee is that the compression already starts like a little bit earlier and bends it a little bit and makes it all a bit softer. And we don't want to have like, we basically don't have too much kind of like overlapping effects in the compressor. That's why I also put the slopes very high. And I put it to a linear phase in here so that we don't affect the phase so much. And once we record this out, sometimes you need to record out a bunch. I don't know why it behaves a little bit different, but if that's the case, then just record like multiple ones and then do like a visual comparison. So it won't be the same, obviously, because we processed it and applied some filtering to it. But you can basically say if there's something missing, like we just had, that there's some kind of like crazy hole in it. You can compare stuff like that. This are almost like equal height. It's kind of like equal height here. Maybe this one is actually a little bit lower here, but I would say it's like super crazy differences. Especially also here in the beginning, you need to take a look. You can quite easy like shave off the highs or do some weird things to the mids here. To me, it looks quite decent, to be honest. Let's give like a listen also to what we have extracted out here. I think it's a quite good kick. And I want to show you quickly the automations I did here. Don't get confused. I started with different bands. So this is band 2, band 1 and band 3. But what I basically did is the first band, the low band, band 2. If we look, then in the beginning we are very strict. So we're filtering everything out which is below 0 dB, so which should be everything. And in the end, I even go here to 0 because I don't want to really filter it here. And then I curve it down. So you need to experiment a little bit where you put the points and how you put the curve to get like good result. And on band 3, it's basically the opposite, and as we know, basically from the curve, if we set this crossover very high, probably could even bend it like more. We could bend it like this, and then we could get rid of those hi-hat stuff here in the kick. So you could try like if you get better results like this, for example. That's what you need to experiment with. And then here on band 1. What I did is I automated the threshold that we don't have any low mids in the beginning. Then we have here that area where we have the low mids, and then we are kind of like filtering out all the low mids from maybe like half the kick here. We could maybe start a little bit later with that, but I believe once you get this for many kicks, so there won't be like huge adjustments. So why I went for 3 bands is more simple to kind of like adjust those points, but as I said, I believe if you maybe do like 4 or 5 bands, you can get better results with more effort, of course. You get like a quite decent and clean kick out here, so it's almost kind of like a sine wave here. Not like 100%, and And I'm sure you can also combine different techniques. You could also work with EQ maybe instead of the compressor, and you should get like similar results. So there are many ways how you can do this, and this is just like one way how you can do this. And I think it's a pretty good way with the expander, because you can set a lot of values, which doesn't make it always easier, but which gives you more control over it than just like a plain EQ. I like this technique a little bit more. But now I want to go quickly about the downsides. So there are many downsides to this, and that's why I would never use this kick now like I found it here in a track. First downside, you're ripping a kick, so there's probably some copyright issues. Probably nobody will sue you for that, but maybe you get problems with YouTube algorithms or anything. I don't know. That's kind of like one downside. Another downside would be that you are ripping a track of a limited track, so it's already went through mastering and through limiting. It won't be probably the original kick how the guy used it. Then you are bringing in errors from the processing, so the more processing you add, the probably you will change a little bit the tones. I guess with the linear phase we should be pretty safe, but there will be some changes which make it like a little bit different from the original one. And also there are errors in the kick itself, because as we have seen in the beginning, there are some pads and stuff which we don't get out completely. I mean, we just average them out, but they're still there, and maybe very tiny, and maybe with the filtering it gets very good, but I still guess we don't get it very perfect, because if we would get it perfect, then we wouldn't have things like this, that this looks this shape here, and other things. Yeah, and then there's the last part, and this is I think the biggest disadvantage of it. That doesn't look like a regular kick, and the reason for that is usually artists fit their kicks to the bass or the bass to the kick and vice versa. So there's probably some EQing in this, that this kick works really well together with the bass used, so that they are one unit, that they blast out together really nicely. This may not fit to your bass, so that's something you need to consider as well. But now I want to tell you how I would use this. Once I have it extracted like this, I could use this as a reference for making a kick in kick 2. I could use this as a reference if I load it into Span and export it, and then if I make my own kick and I want to EQ it a little bit differently, then I can always compare how this kick looks. So that's probably how I would use it, and also to learn a little bit about the shapes and how they did it. So that's all, I think, a little bit better applications. But the cool thing is with this, if you save this whole thing in your library, then you will be able to quickly throw kicks in here. And you can, for example, like rip kicks from different tracks out very quickly, and then try if that kind of like kick works with your track, and then re-synthesize it, for example. And I think that's a cool thing. Let me know in the comments if you like those kind of tutorials, or if this is a little bit too nerdy thing. Also, for me, it was more like the challenge if I can do it, if I can really clean that sound out. That was something I wanted to know, and so I was experimenting with that. Let me also know in the comments what topics you want to know.